Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video after a little bit of a hiatus. I will make a video in the future of this channel, as well as kind of exactly what transpired for this last kind of hiatus. And considering this is a hiatus, I figured the best thing or most interesting thing I could talk about is Hunter x Hunter, which to a lot of fans and even the fandom on Reddit is literally called hiatus. So today we're going to be examining why the Dark Continent is the greatest arc, that greatest manga arc, anyways, that never was. And I'll explain what that. We'll get to what that means later on. But first and foremost, we have to talk about kind of a pretty interesting thing in the previous arc, which was the 13th Chairman arc, which introduced us to Hunter x Hunter politics, the association at large, genuinely a little bit more examined on what a hunter actually entails and means, as well as actually introducing ourselves to characters like the Zodiacs, especially Gin and Parison, which are very big characters in the arc that goes after this, which is the Dark Continent Exposition arc, which is the first in the manga. The reason that these are very important to establish this Dark Continent as a place was first and foremost one of the big things that we talked about, and Togashi talked about, and kind of made as a world building exercise, was to have the Chimera Ants, a world-ending threat, be only a level C, as we saw in the manga, compared to some other threats that we later see in Hunter x Hunter. They came from the Dark Continent. We'll talk about those too, that they kind of came back with the exposition from the Dark Continent. But also now we know what other creatures could possibly live from, and the fact that they were only a C ranking is just wildly fascinating on the Dark Continent, actual living creatures themselves that live there. And so the previous arc really set up the world politics, why maybe it's, if Netero's son had to be hidden for so long, then the whole continent could have been hidden for so long as well, is just really fantastic setup. It's really quickly like building this beyond Netero character that is quickly and possibly one of the most fascinating Hunter x Hunter characters in the entirety of the series. The community at large too. I don't personally. I don't think this will ever be an arc that we'll actually see. I'll examine some reasons later, but it's been over 1,000 days since the last Hunter x Hunter chapter. It would be a miracle if we ever get to chapter 400. Anyways, so the characters that really are the standout ones are Gin and Parison and their role. Gin also has some really great moments with his son. I know it's very few and far between, but he actually mentions to Gon that the stuff about Kite, but also the stuff about maybe your aura is actually just hidden and you can't see it. So I'm glad that they got to have some recollection. And they got to go back. There's some really great panels of him just walking, Jin walking in these streets that look kind of abandoned. And I think it really plays into this character that is just kind of an average Joe that really, really wants to see this Dark Continent. And right when Gin and Parison, they have this like will there, won't they? And they're like, Gin is like willing to pay his way into this team that's going to head to the Dark Continent. And he really wants to get to that Dark Continent. I think it has to do with maybe his relative, maybe even his father being Don Freeze. And Don Freeze is actually this character who wrote the one book of the Dark Continent, which is all the information that the Hunter x Hunter world has on the Dark Continent. And this exposition team by Beyond Netero, he's basically willing to pay his way in. And Parison's like, oh, I don't like being not considered number 2. And there's this whole dynamic. And in fact, the both of them have to team up to fight somebody. And Parison really wants him to use his net abilities. And Gin's like, no, I'm still not going to use them. Just some of the funniest and interesting moments. He copies Liario. I'm terrible at saying that guy's name. But the baseline anyways is that he copies his ability to punch, after he got punched himself. So really the skin person is an interesting character because he's always thinking about the next steps that are involved. And I think he's wanted to go to the Dark Continent and basically was waiting for Isaac Neterov to die, which is maybe one reason why he wasn't in the Chimera arc, because you'd have to think that some of these greatest hunters maybe were just curious on what was out there as well. The other Zodiacs don't even know that it's there, which is also just fascinating. And then we get the panel, and it was one thing to have a connection with Isaac Neterov's son being beyond, and the whole Khakeen Empire thing, and the fact that they want to establish themselves in a new continent. All that is really crazy. It's so much setup, just so much setup. Like, it's just so much intrigue, really. Just you have to reread these panels because it's just amazing. But then we get this panel of the Dark Continent and all the creatures living there, and it's like, wow, if Togashi could ever give us this, the pure scale of the greater, you can see a dinosaur-like creature that is probably the size of a mountain being swallowed up by a plant that is the size of, Mount Everest, maybe. And these humans are just so small there, and it just is such a powerful scene. There's also a relative of Killua's there. And I think that those kind of things are just great for the world building, and it's just so rare to see this in Hunter x Hunter, because we usually just stick to one specific, very small spot, and it's great, because Togashi works well in a closed environment, but this is great. And it's the fact that they were only on the whole Hunter x Hunter world is a very small area of land, on the Lake Mobius. That is by far the most interesting thing. The fact that humans originated from there, that is great. But it's just so unfortunate that the fact is that there's so many other things that have to come first, right? This concept too. This other thing I want to touch on really briefly is this concept of the black whale one being like this big deal, right? This last ditch effort to maybe because it's like the Christopher Columbus thing. I wanted to explore the world kind of thing. I think that's kind of what the inspiration is this brand new world, right? And humanity's last ditch effort to try to inhabit a space that maybe they used to, but they got pushed out of, so maybe they don't, it's just an evolution thing where they don't belong there. Just absolutely, I really want to see the ant's origin and all that kind of stuff, right? And then we get to the Secession War, and I do understand. I do understand why there is a war arc, why there is a secession arc, and I don't think it's a typical war arc. It's a very chest. I would love to make a video on how it's a perfect example of what Togashi could do with the amount of time. It's a chess game at its full, at its max. There's so many players. It's a fantastic arc, right? But you can't deny that it comes at such a pivotably rough spot, because if we were able to just somehow just pull a Black Clover thing and just jump right into it, we could have actually got at least about 20 or some odd, maybe even 30 chapters in the Dark Continent. That would have just been mind-blowing stuff. And really, when you think about what everything that has to go on, we have to have a conclusion of Hisoka versus Kroll and the Phantom Troop. We have to have a conclusion of the Phantom Troop, which they're probably going to get wiped out. And Kurapika has to meet the Phantom Troop again. All these things have to be. The princes, they pretty much all have to die. Sreiznik, he has to show up and he has to do something crazy. He's probably going to be the last one standing. There's so much that has to happen. They have to make it to this other smaller continent where the association was going to abandon Khakeen and tell them that the Dark Continent. What happens when Sreiznik finds out? I mean, and a lot of those other princes and princesses, I honestly have my money on Camellia, because I don't know why, but I just have a feeling it's either her or Sreiznik. There's so much going on, right? I just can't fathom there being ever a time. It's like the Fantasia arc in Berserk. I just don't know if there'll ever be a time. Their setup is so great. The fact that we see so many lovable characters in this arc, whether good or bad, what their intention for being on the Dark Continent is, what having a new life. It's just so unfortunate that there's so much setup, intrigue, politics that are involved, just world exploring like it was promised in one of the first chapters of Hunter x Hunter, and we will never see this. I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that people would comment on this later and say, "Oh, we were dead wrong." We're gonna get the continent. We're gonna get Dark Continent finally, but I just don't see there ever being a time. Um, and maybe someday they can make this into a novel series. I think it works pretty well. At least the Secession War. I wish that these were novels. Side novels before. Just so that Tagashi could have got through this stuff quicker. But it feels like an artist, a great painting, like something like the whole Sistine Chapel ceiling, and we don't actually get most of it finished, and it just feels like an artist without a voice, just having this thing loom over, and it's just such an interesting thing in the manga and anime community, and I can't wait if this ever gets animated. I wonder what people will actually think of this arc. It's really, there's so many players involved. I mean, I don't know if anyone. I think I think what'll happen too, if we ever get to the Dark Continent, my prediction is that we'll have the redrawing of that panel, right, where we have 3 characters looking at all these creatures, because that's the only people that are going to be left, because that's how much carnage is going to be from the Secession War, right, in the previous arc. And I honestly think it'll be like Kurapika or Lirio, either one of the two, Hisoka, and probably Beyond, and it'll just be like, wow, I kind of wish that his wife could draw it, but I digress. It's just really the only arc I've ever read, and just almost kind of am just made peace with the fact that we'll just never see a conclusion to it. So anyways, if you like the video, or if you like this content, subscribe and like it, and try to have some engagement with it. I'll be making other videos, especially about the Golden Age arc and Berserk, coming up pretty much next week. So I look forward to that, and I'll see you guys the next time. Bye.